And a very good morning to you and welcome to K24 this morning. My name is Jeff Morte, and as always, if you're joining us for the first time, what we do in this particular first hour is look at the big stories that you're waking up to on the front pages of your dailies, and then take these matters into context, get some analysis and different perspectives on these particular issues, even as we move forward in this particular conversation. As always, we love it when you are part of the conversation as well. You can get me at I am Jeff Morte or at K24 TV. That's on Twitter. On WhatsApp, the WhatsApp number scrolls at the bottom of the screen. We love it when you give us your feedback on what you think is the big issue, as well as weighing in on what we're discussing right here. Don't forget, by the way, if you haven't yet gotten yourself a copy of Your People Daily, you can get it straight to your phone for only 10 shillings. The number that you dial is star 550 star 4 hash. Once again, the number is star 550 star 4 hash. Dial that number and get yourself a copy of your PD straight to your phone. It's brought to you by The People Daily and Safaricom. And it's a world of convenience because you don't need any mobile app for that. You don't need any data either. Just a number, star 550 star 4 hash. It's brought to you once again by The People Daily and Safaricom. And as you get yourself your e-paper, download that copy of your PD. This is a headline that you're waking up to this morning. Let's see what the PD has for you. Let's have it up on screen. Governors stoke boundaries war. Now, they're calling it a recipe for chaos. Unbridled appetite for extra revenue, agricultural land, state projects, and bloated egos have pushed county chiefs to extend their boundaries, creating tension as experts warn it's a matter of time before it explodes. Calling it a ticking time bomb. Right here, you can see some of the counties with boundary disputes from Kisumu, Vihiga, Siaya border, the Nandi-Kakamega border, Kisumu again, Kericho border on that particular front. Further up north, we have Mandera-Wajir border on that side as well. Meru-Isiolo boundary as well, also coming into contention right there. Taita-Taveta-Makueni-Kwale border as well, also coming into contention on this particular issue. And you can find that story, of course, in your copy of Your People Daily today. You can find it on page 4 and 5 as far as that's concerned for details on that particular story. Also in your PD, this on page 13, signatures handover seals BBI debate. Now, this handover happens today at 10 a.m. This, of course, what they said from yesterday. And the big question is really, where do they go from here? As one faction still seeks to build consensus, as they say, and the other really adamant on the fact that the train has left the station. We're moving forward with this particular process. Where does this stand, even as they move forward at this particular point in time? That story is on page 13 of Your People Daily. You can get all the details of that particular story right there. Let's just scroll up to the top of this particular page. Healthcare system headed for collapse as nurses strike rages. This is on page 14. They are going on to day 5 as we get into today as far as this is concerned. The question really is, on the priority list, how far down is healthcare with a looming strike that was averted earlier in the week for doctors, but now clinical officers and nurses downing their tools during these COVID times? How does the government really get back on track and deal with these pressing issues? A key question that citizens are asking, but you can find this story on page 14 of Your People Daily today. Let's move it along. Look at the front page of the Standard now. Let's scroll that up. Walking in the footsteps of Baba Yao. Through hard play and popular antics, this pair earned a place at the table of high-stake politics. Their monikers, Sonko and Baba Yao, overshadowed their official names. Some say they took their jokes too far. Waitito was voted by Kiambu MCAs on the eve of Christmas last year. Is Sonko now facing the same prospect? This story is on page 8 of your Standard. You can get all the details right there. Of course, Senate having their hearing yesterday as far as how they're going to conduct this particular hearing. And it will be conducted in the plenary. This happening next week on Thursday and Friday. So right now it's up to Governor Sonko to put his best defense forward as he gets to the floor of the Senate next week. Also in your copy of your Standard, finally, KEMSA to release 5.9 billion shillings coronavirus kits. CAS Mwangangi addressing the press yesterday, speaking about the fact that this had been a delay because of the procedure that was meant to be followed. There was a cabinet memo that was supposed to be dispatched, and as of yesterday, that had already been done. So as far as PPEs are concerned, those that have been lying in the KEMSA warehouses, that will be released and dispatched to various health workers right across the country. And that story is on page 10 of your Standard. Let's look at the front page of the Daily Nation now. Masters of doublespeak, they're calling it. Not so long ago, President Kenyatta, DP Ruto, and ODM Chief Odinga swore to champion the cause of health workers. But it seems this depends on the relationships and political interests. Now, poor patients and medics are dying as the trio flip-flops again on this particular issue. Really no clear way forward as far as this particular issue is concerned. And we've seen just going around the counties how the state of affairs is in different health centers. And that's why the Daily Nation today, calling them the trio that are masters of double-speak. It's a story you can get on page 4 of your Daily Nation today. Also in the Daily Nation, door shut on Ruto, Raila BBI changes as far as that's concerned. So at this particular point in time, this is a story you can get as well on page 8 of your Daily Nation. Where do they go from here as far as this process is concerned? And as Deputy President William Ruto has been asking, how do they make this less contentious even as it heads to a plebiscite, a referendum? You can find that story on page 8 of your Daily Nation. You can look at the Star now. SRC plan to cap perks at 60% of basic pay. The limit would save government as much as 100 billion shillings annually. And at this point in time, this government could use any shilling saved at this particular stage as we deal with very many issues, both health-wise and livelihoods as well. And this story can be found on page 4 and 5 of your Star. Speaking of business and money, let's finally look at the front page of the Business Daily. Kenyans face 1 million shilling fine for secret WhatsApps, messages and SMSs as well. This bill seeks users of telecom gadgets to reveal information to state for national security breaches. What does this also mean to the right of privacy? Where does that line really, where is it drawn as far as that's concerned? You can find this story in your copy of your Business Daily on page 4 in therein. All the details of that in there as well. So that's what you're waking up to as far as your dailies are concerned. But today we're talking about how to recover in terms of an economy as far as COVID-19 is concerned. And even as we talk about that, let's set the stage, because right now front and center in the nation's psyche is the healthcare system and how we deal with that. Now, deserted words, long queues, slow service, if any, and family members evacuating patients were the scenes witnessed in public hospitals countrywide. Poor patients seeking medical services in the facilities endure pain and agony on the 4th day of the nurses and clinical officers strike. Now, this is a report that was filed yesterday by Diana Rose.
Bungoma Referral Hospital has been closed indefinitely after nurses and clinical officers strike got into the 3rd day. Patients admitted in the hospital have been transferred to private hospitals by their relatives, whereas those who are seeking health services in the facility were turned away. This ward was full to capacity. However, those left behind are the ones who could not settle their medical bills yet. Betty Chebet cannot be discharged from hospital because of an outstanding bill of 5,000 Kenyan shillings.
Nimekaa tangu tarehe 29 mpaka nimefuta juzi tarehe 7, bili imetoka shilingi 10,000. Haki nimeshindwa nitafanya aje.
Wacha tusefu maisha ya mtu kuliko hii maneno ya BBI. BBI tunaweza iweka kando kidogo.
Foster Buluma's grandchild was born prematurely and is in the hospital's incubation nursery.
Hawa watoto wako kwa oxygen. Tunawatoa tutawabeba aje, tunavipeleka wapi?
The Medics Association chairman in Western Kenya, Dr. Anthony Akoto, has called on leaders who are politicizing the healthcare workers' strike to be reasonable.
A solution will be found, because this is a situation that cannot continue for too long, because one life is too many.
In the meantime, nurses and clinical officers in Uasin Gishu County who are striking have vowed to remain away from their workstations until when their demands will be fully implemented. Union officials for the two groups of health workers in the county insist that before returning to work, the national and county government must ensure they have a comprehensive cover and enhanced risk allowances owing to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic.
Time for talk is enough. The government is to act. Sisi hatutaki maneno mingi. Kama hakuna PPEs, hakuna kazi. Kama vile mnaona, huko hakuna kazi inaendelea, na msidanganywe ati kuna madaktari wanafanya kazi. Madaktari wako nyumbani.
Wenzetu wanaumia, wamepata magonjwa haya ya COVID. Tafadhali tunahitaji haya PPEs. PPEs sio K95 pekee. Face masks, face shields pia tupewe, kwa sababu bila haya tuko at risk, vile wenzetu wameumia wengi.
Although Makueni County Health Department says its clinician strike has been called off, the nurses union are disputing the narrative, vowing to go on with the strike.
Barua ambayo wameweza kutuandikia ndio hii. Wale waunguzi ambao walikuwa wameenda kwa strike wataweza kurudi kazini kuanzia kesho saa 2 asubuhi.
Hata sisi tulishikwa na mshangao. Hatuwezi tukaelezea bwana minister alikuwa na nia gani ndio aweze kusema tumesitisha mgomo.
Si mgomo ya Makueni County, na sisi kama viongozi wa Makueni County na wahudumu wa Makueni County hatuna uwezo wa kusimamisha ama kusitisha hiyo mgomo.
The nurses and clinical officers and laboratory staff had threatened to go on strike before the county moved to court to block them from effecting the strike. Dana Rose, K24 TV.
Thanks for that, Dana Rose. Of course, that also sets the context for our discussion today, of course, as we jump into this particular conversation. We like it when you're part of this particular conversation. In fact, we have our question of the day right there. We'll be having it up on screen for you as we discuss it. Let's have it up as you see. Are you confident in the manner the government is handling the national debt? It's a key question of concern. Some people have said probably more of that particular conversation, less referendum talk. Are you confident in the manner the government is handling the national debt? You can get me at I am Jeff Mote or at K24 TV on that particular issue. You can also send your WhatsApp messages at the bottom of the screen. Are you confident in how the government is handling national debt? Let's know. Let's have this conversation right here. Speaking of, in studio, joined by governance expert, Mr. Gabriel Muthuma, walks in with his signature, Thursday swagger. Morning, Gabriel.
Good morning, Jeff. Welcome back from your sabbatical. I hope you are well rested.
Well rested indeed.
That is good. Nice
Thanks
to
so
have you back.
Asante.
In fact, you see, now I'm the one introducing you.
Imagine. You've taken over.
Goes without saying.
Asante sana.
We were good. While you're gone,
yes.
While you're gone,
Paul
movie happened.
Good care.
Movie happened. That's a great character.
Asante sana. Also joined by Edward Onyonyi. He's a media trainer and researcher. It's been a while since you've been on the show, Edward. I think I can welcome you. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
Before even we jump into the COVID economic recovery plan, before we talk about national debt, let's first speak to this healthcare issue that we have in the country right now. Doctor strike put on pause for 14 days to get this in order. Nurses and clinical officers downed their tools, yet we're not hearing any statements, firm statements on this, and more importantly, firm action being taken to stop this, Gabriel.
Jeff, you know, first of all, the first thing, we are dealing with a very serious pandemic, and this is something we've all agreed. Secondly, then there is need to have boardroom discussions. The reason why I keep insisting that there is need to have boardroom discussions between whether it's members of KPMDU, whether it's, you know, the nurses, to talk about, and the ministry officials, and to an extent to include governors, all right? Because they need to talk to one another and come up with a solution. Remember, we all agree globally, we were all caught flat-foot at the same time. So it's not like we had a country or a county that was better off than the other one. All of a sudden, we are just dealing with this pandemic. So there is need for us to discuss. And when the doctors and the nurses, who are first responders and frontline personnel, tell you that they need PPEs to be able to perform their duties and job diligently, I think this is a matter that needs to be taken seriously. Just the other day, I think it was last week or the beginning of this week, when Dr. Mwachonda, the secretary, is it the Secretary General of KPMDU, when he was saying that, you know what, in December 21st, we are going on strike. And if we do, there's nothing that will stop us. I think between now and the 25th, there needs to be a lot of talking. Jeff, you know the other problem that you're doing. We are talking through the media. These organizations, the ministry officials, they are talking through the media. That's not the way to go. People are dying, Jeff, and it's not only people. Doctors are dying. So when you hear, doctors coming out to say, we are not going to work to be killed, they have become an endangered species as well.
Right.
You know, and let's not this bring nonsensical thing of saying, everybody is dying. No. I know it can be understood. A life lost is one too many. We just need to be very, very sincere when we are dealing with our doctors, because when we lose one doctor, if we go with the ratio that we are being told, one doctor, I don't know, to 40 or to 54,000 people, if we go with that ratio, losing one doctor is a disaster. And losing a doctor at this time of this pandemic, my friend, it is critical. So I think as much as we are talking about this health issue, Jeff, I think we need to be sincere about how we are going about it. And the best way to solve this issue is to talk with one another. Let these groups sit down in a boardroom. Let them agree. How are they going to be financed? Where are the PPEs? We are told most of them are somewhere in a warehouse. What are they waiting for? You know, let them be disseminated across the hospitals, you know, and clinics across the country. You know, that said and done, we, all of us as a country, need to be mindful of the welfare of these doctors. And how do we start that, Jeff? Is by first going to where we started, by following the Public Order Act. COVID is not going down. As a matter of fact, it is increasing numbers by the day. So we go back to the COVID Public Health Act, which is sanitizing, wearing your masks, and social distancing.
Edward, I'll come to you on this one because as it stands, what we've seen in the public arena is a lot of blame games and finger pointing. Health is a devolved function. No, we need money from national government. All of this is happening there. Former PM asks doctors to be more understanding of what's going on. Yet even as we look at all of this right now, what seems to be important to the political class is not stopping. It's moving forward. The train left the station and has been moving very fast. This, of course, alluding to BBI. Have all leaders just like changed tack and focus even now with this cloud really over the country's head?
I think it's because we have to appreciate the fact that as long as our health system is giving an option in terms of all these public officials will not go to that bed in Bagathi, they will not go to that bed in Kenyatta National Hospital. They have options of either private healthcare or flying out of the country. Then they will not feel the impact of even local doctors because their doctors, their private doctors, their personal doctors will be called. And so that for me puts a very precarious position in terms of the state of the nation and the stakes that are there, in the sense that if from the first time we had a serious major strike, the government went and got doctors from Cuba. So what stops the government from, giving a, very minor, cursory look at this issue? So it is just an issue of priorities that I feel that the national government and, the key stakeholders in this issue have options. And so because they have options, they will not care so much about that. Right. And that's why they will advance their own agenda and leave the whole issue to dissipate on its own. So even when you go into the whole context of negotiations per se, it will be so hard for us to reach a middle ground because the person who holds the purse, the Ministry of Health, is not willing to barge in. I mean, the Treasury officials are not willing to barge in, you see, because there are other national priorities, according to them, which should be attended, and health is not one of them. Why? They have options.
And when you look at it at this particular point in time, in terms of forcing their hands in this particular regard, is the only way out of this for the medical fraternity to down their tools? Doctors, clinical officers, nurses, no time for debate, just put that hard line in the sand. If you don't do this, we're not going back to work. Is that the way to force their hand at the negotiating table? Actually,
we have had this across board for so long. I mean, how did the new constitution come in? How did we get, to repeal, Section 2A? It was by hardball. So I think the national psyche around negotiations has always been hardline. From the historical context, we have always presented a hardline stance as the final push. So there is no other option. If there was an option, for example, to go to court to compel, we have seen government, court orders being disobeyed. It's not longer working. If you talk about issues to do with collective bargaining agreements, they are not obeyed. We have one which the nurses and the doctors signed. It was not obeyed. So what other option do they have? If their own, because going to hospital right now for the doctors, it means one life being lost or yourself being at risk. But you see, these are professional careers. It is not a matter of life and death. Someone can be a doctor today. They can decide to go back and switch and become another take another position if their life is actually at stake.
Right.
But for people in government, they should see that and look at it and realize that because we have a deficit in terms of our staffing, in terms of our health systems, giving an inch to this and allowing for space for negotiations, it can be able to save many lives. But I don't know if they have that sense of empathy, and that one is a big concern.
And we'll wait and see how this plays out, of course, even as the nurses have down their tools and said they're not going back until their demands are met. And as ongoing negotiations take place between the government and the doctors, they have 14 days to sort that out as well. We'll be keeping a keen eye on that particular story. But let's change gears now and focus on what we're speaking to right now. And it's all about the COVID economic recovery plan from where we stand. Gabby, even before COVID hit the world and, you know, hit our shores as a country, already the red flag was up high concerning the public debt in the country.
Yes.
Even international organizations were telling the government, just look at your debt, think about it, because you're on a very precarious ground right now. Here we are, having taken more debt. What's your sense of where it stands? Because the counter argument is that it's not the debt, it's what you do with it.
You know,
How do
Jeff,
you feel?
you know, Jeff, you're very right, because I think this topic, we've had it, and we started a long time with this topic of debt, even before COVID came, so you're quite right. And you remember when Jubilee came in, the Jubilee administration, mainly after the first time when they started with the SGR, Jubilee set out some serious undertaking in matters of infrastructure. And as much as we were supporting that kind of uptick, really, because you needed that infrastructure, we needed to leapfrog for us to be able to, at the very least, start discussing attainability and how the country can move forward in the sophisticates of the 21st century. So everybody understood that we needed to leapfrog. We needed to continue, you know, covering a lot of a road. We needed to continue connecting electricity. Just as we were turning to the 2010s, we were talking about bringing about 5 or 6 fiber optic cables, which already landed. And as you can see, Sirius Terrestrial is moving around. Last mile connectivity is all over. This is good development. This is good development.
Right.
Even when we talk about roads, this is good development. Just look at what Thika Road was able to open. Look at that corridor between Nairobi and Thika and Murang'a. Look at that corridor which has been opened not only for trade, but people to go and live, get out of Nairobi. That just tells you it is a good idea. The problem has been, Jeff, that many people have been unable to economically take this advantage. For instance, the government has actually borrowed, and we have seen they have borrowed to build hospitals. They have borrowed to build roads. They have borrowed to fix the airports. They have borrowed to build, what I'm telling you, the new schools. Now, if you look at a school and a hospital, Jeff, in reality, they are not supposed to be profit-making, but they are supposed to be economic enablers, that those people coming out of those schools or institutions are able to think and grow the economy in one way or the other, whether it's through employment, whether it's through business, whether it's through engaging to economic building activities. That is the mindset that we should come in. Our debt notwithstanding, I believe there has been areas where we have misused that money. For instance, it was not long ago, Jeff, when we were talking about in 2 years, we have lost 220-something billion lost. I mean, look at that. Today, SRC is talking about capping double payments, which will amount to saving 100 billion shillings a year. So there is the issue of debt, and there is the issue of misusing these funds that we collect as debt. If we were to put debt into the proper usage, probably we would feel it a little bit off. But that notwithstanding, I think if we are not producing more, Jeff, we are going to run into this issue. If our coffee and tea business that we are exporting outside there, if we are not going to produce more, we have already become a net importer that sooner or later we are going to start bringing in food for our own consumption. It is going to actually hit us hard. So as much as we are talking about debt, we need to also figure out what must we start selling? You know, what must we start taking out there? What must start bringing us foreign exchange. This is the kind of narrative that we are going to ease the debt.
Okay.
Otherwise, going into the red, and we are still a net importer, we are not producing more. This is an accident looking for a place to happen.
Edward, very quickly as we get into our break, because as he said, what we need to do is change our thinking and think of how we can export, take more out there, you know, turn our productivity gears. But the president thought of that, brought the big four, there's manufacturing in there, still doesn't seem to do the trick with this one. What's your take on that very quickly as we go into our break?
I think we have to look at one, ambition and the capacity. You know, it's good to be ambitious and say we will export more, we will do all this. But what is the capacity of the country to actually move towards an export-oriented economy? It means at Treasury, you need to put in the incentives necessary to jumpstart an exporting economy. And right now what you have is that we have so much economy that is focused on imports, because you have cheap imports coming from across the borders, you know, because people can be able to think that having go-downs and all this import business is actually growing the economy. You're actually taking money out, you see. So I don't think we have the capacity to merge our capacity and our ambition.
Okay.
There's a disconnect there.
Okay, I want to take a short break at that particular point in time. As we come back after the break, earlier last week we had the county COVID-19 social economic re-engineering recovery strategy. Again, question begs, even as you look at this, where do we get the money to finance these particular plan to move it forward? We've talked about the big four. How do you move this situation, and how do you make sure that this money actually trickles down to the businesses and gets the economic gears moving? That discussion after the break. This is K24 This Morning.